Hello and welcome to this unprecedented episode at the Indie Football Podcast, where we have got Jack Talbot with us, football correspondent for Transfer.com, and he has also served as a journalist for Time Sports, Guardian Sports, and Mirror Sports, of course. Thank you, Jack, for taking out time and being there with us today. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for the invite. I know it's been a long time coming because we've been discussing it for a while, but we've had a cancellation my end, cancellation your end. So yeah, it's good to be on. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Newcastle Priul, I know for a fact that you were particularly enthusiastic to have Jack with us on board, especially during the transfer window or the last couple of months where we had so much to speak for different teams across the globe. So it's definitely a special episode for us, and we're just getting started.
Absolutely. I mean, at the start, I remember Jack was mainly giving out a lot of news regarding Newcastle. I think it's his favorite club, if I'm not wrong. But with time, what I have like kind of seen is that with Liverpool news also, he has been very reliable. And I, for myself, look forward to news from whatever transfer saga is going on and throwing in some of the exclusives recently, Jack told us about the Dewsbury Hall that there was a thing going on and all. And I mean, he's doing a brilliant job here, so it's great for us to have him on the podcast. We have had some really good guests, but I think Jack definitely, just is for me in the list of the most eminent guests that we have had. And thank you so much, man, for taking out the time. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you so much.
Definitely, because we feel that let's start from the beginning. Having a journalism degree myself, Jack, please help us go through your career as a sports journalist. How did it start, and where did the thought come from? And of course, you are doing pretty well for yourself currently. But tell us a bit more about the genesis of this career option.
I was at university and I wanted to become a film writer, and I realised that it was probably a bit too hard to break into film. And so I knew I liked writing and I knew I liked football. And I think it was April 2015. I remember sitting there and just thought I should put them together and just become a football writer. And so I went to games in Manchester, non-league games, 500 fans, that kind of thing. And I worked for free for about 2 years. Then I got some work experience at national papers like the Telegraph, the Times. And then I went into actual news and I lived in Spain for a little bit near Marbella. But then I kind of got drawn back to sport again. And then I landed a job at the Mirror, and I worked at the Mirror a bit. And then the Daily Star. There's loads in between that, to be honest, as well. But it probably wasn't until not last January, but the January before that I started to sort of message football agents on Twitter. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just found out bits of information, and then I just I tweeted it. And then I think after a couple of months of that, I thought, or maybe I should monetize this. I'm just sort of throwing stuff out there for no reason. Maybe a site would be interested. And it just so happens that Football Transfers was only a year old, and I knew the editors all of them quite prominent editors, and I started doing bits from them. And it's just kind of grown from there, really. And I got offered a full-time job in January of this year. So I've only been doing this, the transfer stuff in a full-time capacity for 8 months. Not a long time at all. So I'm still learning. But unfortunately, in this industry, when you make a mistake, it's not really your bosses who tell you off. It's the general public. If you make a mistake, especially online or on Twitter, they'll let you know about that, and they won't forget it. So you kind of, when you first start, I think there's a healthy degree of cynicism about how reliable you are. And it's about proving that. And I have had agents and other sort of sources and stuff who ignored me this time last year, but because of my account's grown in size, they're willing to talk now. And that's why Romagnio's got 18 million followers now, so every source wants to talk to him. So it's a really long way to go about it, but yeah, it was in essence just sort of putting. I like football, I like writing, and I'd sort of put them together really, and it sort of come to this.
Understandable. That's I think like inspiration for us a lot also because how you told about the part where you have worked for three also for a couple of years. It goes to show the progress that you have made. Also, yeah. So I've come to this part, Jack. See, I have talked to you first as a Liverpool fan. Usually, we keep the this podcast very neutral when it comes to fans. We try to include fans of all clubs. But the thing is, see, as a Liverpool fan, I'm happy with the signing of Wataru Endo. But of course, like the links from Kefren and Thuram came out, and of course, I did resonate with their thoughts when I remember some of the Liverpool journalists came out in ambiguous terms to counter when you had said that we had agreed personal terms because you had also mentioned that it wasn't that it was done something on paper or anything, right? And I agreed that that there was a need for them to kind of take that out. So today they put out this post about Liverpool that they might not put out that they might not sign a number six. Do you think it's a transfer gimmick, or do you think that someone like Doucouré could come in the club by the end of the window?
Oh, yeah, I know you mean. Clubs can do that. Clubs can be deceptive, and they can. I mean, I'm a Newcastle fan, and our club always tells lies to the media about we've got no money, we're so poor, we're not going to sign another player, and then we go and spend 50 million on another player and 30 million here, and so it's hard to say. Sometimes it is genuine. Maybe Klopp does have his man in Enzo, although if that was the case, then I suspect they can't finish the window like that. Maybe it'll be more of more of an advanced midfielder they get. I did a story the other week about possibly Nuben Neves. Matthias Nunes. I always get them too mixed up. Being one, so I'm not sure. With that, I mean, if Klopp really likes him and he thinks he fits in, you've got three midfielders in, two have gone. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's possible that the club are saying that to sort of be deceptive. Although, I suppose looking into that, there'd be no reason to. Although saying that they were quite deceptive about Caicedo, weren't they? Because that came out of nowhere, and they were quite deceptive about Gapco, if you remember, because that came out of nowhere. So Liverpool are capable of doing something extraordinary like that. But in terms of insight into that, I don't know. That could be absolutely genuine. It could just be Enzo as the defensive midfielder.
Fair enough. Talking about the Caicedo deal, it's a very interesting case because I also remember I was very upset as a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
But to be very honest about it, what do you think made Caicedo choose Chelsea at the end? Because there were reports in the media that personal terms were not that much of a problem. Or David Ornstein had also reported it. So, what do you think made him change his mind at the last moment? Was it the agent piece, or was it something else? Was it the money, or was it for footballing reasons? What do you?
I did the story. I think it was in June, and I think he said, "No, I was speaking to his agent, and what he said was that Caicedo was open to all offers away from Brighton, and he'd be happy, just with any sort of prestigious club, top six club, traditional Chelsea, Liverpool, that kind of thing was what I got. Liverpool wouldn't have made that bid, I don't think, if they didn't have any encouragement from his camp to make that bid. In terms of whether the player was deceiving Liverpool, it's very possible. It's very possible that that may have been the case. I think in terms of football agents, there's agents I've spoken to quite regularly for like 2 years, and they are friends, and I think that football agents have a bit of a bad rap with things. I think they get a bit of stick, and I saw some of the stuff about Liverpool. Reporters were saying, "Oh, the agent pulled the wool over his eyes, and the agent did that." And I feel that probably Caicedo just made his own mind up, and maybe he was just maximizing, how much money he would get. He has no affiliation to Chelsea or Liverpool. He's from Ecuador, and I think that he just, got whatever was best, and maybe he preferred to live in London. That's always the case sometimes. But I don't know. I mean, you know, what the agent tells you, what the club tells you is sometimes it has an agenda to it. So it's quite hard to find the truth. What I always try and say is, you know, weigh everything up. Don't just listen to me or even Romano, you know, just weigh things up. But as it is, Chelsea spent £115 million on a player who's probably worth about half that, I'd say. So it's not bad going. And I think the bid, if anything, that you made does show that you do have money there. And it's kind of revealed Liverpool's hands a little bit. So there's no excuses now not to spend that much in the market, because I think that will be quite disastrous.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel when you, all of us, you know, anyone in the football world currently speaks about huge amounts of money being spent for a particular transfer, and then somewhere down the conversation people also probably bring up the Real Madrid and Mbappe conversation. You know, what do you, and since you are particularly in the game, what do you know from the sources, and how do you look at the entire Kylian Mbappe Real Madrid situation, which has, in my opinion, already etched itself for posterity, because everyone keeps talking about it, and yet it does not seem to even happen anytime soon.
My understanding of Mbappe has come from, because I don't do stories Real Madrid really. Like, it's just come from when I have a friend who's a journalist who covers Spain, and so yeah, he mentioned to me about personal terms sort of being done and in place, and that he wants to go there, but it's hard to navigate with Mbappe because he's so large that it's almost, you know, it's even tenfold trying to find the truth in that. I'm not sure what the situation is now. I haven't. I mean, it was that he's gonna stay for another year, and then there's been some sort of compromise with PSG where he will let go of some of the loyalty bonus, I think. Then he'll get a move. I cannot see him staying around PSG. He won't be there in 2 years, and I think he's sort of destined for Real Madrid, really. But that's again, that's there's no insight. That's just sort of what I've read, basically, really. But I think it is symbolic of where football's at. You know, these types of stories of players being bigger than the club and loyalty bonuses of £60 million is unthinkable. I think 20 years ago, you know, a transfer story was quite, a club likes a player and a deal would get done, whereas now there's so many different facets to it, and it's always vastly complicated. And I think we've seen it with this window, Caicedo you mentioned earlier, but every story is just so multi-layered and stuff. It's much crazier than it was. I think that's because of the money that's at stake now.
Yeah, interesting, because at one point, you know, when people do continuously talk about this conversation in some angle or the other, but for you to give us such a holistic approach or view in it does help and does clear many of the apprehensions that many people have around it. Of course, we will continue speaking on many transfer windows discussions and all. One thing that I was curious to know more about is the sports people think tank site. You know, you just mentioned, I was going through your social media, and that was one of the things mentioned in your handle, which I felt is a bit different from everything else that you are doing. Can you tell us more about that?
What's that? Sorry, the site I work for.
Yeah, the sports people think tank site that you've got.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. That was a long time ago. I did a work experience for a former a BBC Sport chap called
Yeah.
Leon Mann, and it was about diversity in football. Like in England, for instance, at the time there was just, I think it was just Chris Hughton who was the only black manager in the Championship, and when you
Yeah.
sort of compare that to the amount of players who are black or Asian, etc., then it doesn't really weigh up. So it was sort of challenging that, really. But to be honest, yeah, it is, isn't it? I haven't done anything like that for about half a decade. But yeah, fair enough. You picked up on it. But no, yeah, I just did it a little bit for him, and I learned about it and the implementation of the Rooney Rule and stuff like that. But yeah, that was a very long time ago. I forgot. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. Of course,
Yeah,
all
that's
of
not
all of us have got things that we started a long while ago, and we just struggle to continue doing it now that we have got so many other things going on. But one interesting thing that you also mentioned earlier is Newcastle having to do their work in a way that they keep telling people different things, the media different things, and probably we also wanted to know your thoughts on the business that Newcastle do, and do you think there will be more incomings regarding the Newcastle team?
No, I don't think there'll be any more unless Jamal Lascelles goes, and we've got a lot of players and a lot of high wages, so they're contracted obviously until
Yeah.
2026, say, and so no club wants to match that. And obviously, if you're on 50 grand a week and the club offers you 20, you're going to say no, right? So I think that's it. But in terms of our window, yeah, we've got Sandro Tonali, sorry, and he's sort of been our marquee signing, came out of nowhere. Lewis Hall,
Yeah.
Livramento. I think the trouble Newcastle had, it's a good issue to have, but they didn't plan to get them to the Champions League. This was something that was supposed to happen in 2005, 2004, maybe even further than that. But because they've entered the Champions League, there's an expectancy now to sort of bring in the best players and that. But I think they've done well. We've signed Livramento at Southampton and Lewis Hall of Chelsea, purported to be two of the best English fullbacks probably in sort of 3 years. That's
Right.
the trajectory at the moment. So we're not buying, for the immediate, I don't think. There's been a couple of players like that. It's been great business, and I think a lot of Newcastle fans are quite patient because of just how before the takeover it wasn't very pleasant.
Mike Ashley's days. Yeah.
More precisely, Mike Ashley was just chaos, and all we hoped for every season was to stay up. That was the pinnacle of excitement. Is hopefully we wouldn't get relegated. Of course, we did twice, but we always came back up. So it's much better, and I think our recruitment is. Maybe it's a bit biased. I don't know, but I think Brighton are probably the best in the league, and then after that, taking the last sort of year or so, I'd say Newcastle are the second best. Possibly, I think Liverpool were amazing a few years ago, but that they've obviously dropped off. I think a little bit.
Also
And
coming back to Liverpool, do I just interrupt you here, man?
yeah, yeah,
Links have come to Ryan Gravenberg. Links have come to obviously Kefren Turam is someone who you are aware of definitely. So, I know, I of course it's up to the club, but and of course, like there have been talks of a left-sided central defender who can come in and be part of the new system. So, what do you realistically see Liverpool doing in the last 10 days of the transfer window?
So was that last bit?
I'm asking that what do you realistically see Liverpool doing in the last 10 days of the transfer window? Because, of course, a lot of clubs wouldn't want to sell at this point of time. So, what do you think they are going to do? Like, what are your predictions with it, considering how they have been in the market?
In terms of their transfer business,
Yeah,
what I
right.
think they do, yes, of course. So obviously they've got Enzo in. I think it's quite obvious they've got a fair bit of money after the big bid on Caicedo. They want a left. I think they're after Levi Colwell, but that they obviously signed a fresh deal. Then they tried Caicedo. I think what Liverpool are going to do now it'd be a bit more of a guessing game because they're going to keep their cards really close to their chest. You mentioned Keprin Thuram. That's someone they agreed personal terms with verbally, and then they moved away from him and got Dominic Szoboszlai. And but there's been murmurs that they might go back in for him. And he was always expected to leave Nice this window, but it just hasn't happened. Tobido as well. So he could be snatched up for 35 million. Dewsbury Hall's another name I had. I didn't really want to put it out, but it's just a name I heard that I could go for. But maybe the optics.
Liverpool fans were not at all happy when that thing came out.
Yeah, no,
Everyone was
sure.
like, yeah.
I think Andre's another one, but there's been issues around that and the fact that his current club don't want to sell until the Brazilian Serie A is over with. I don't know. To be honest, I suspect that you will spend. I think it would just be it'd be suicide if you didn't. You'd have to. I think you need to get another centre back in. Thuram, I say, could be one.
yeah.
But Tuchemani's always been liked, and I think if they had a bit of encouragement from him, If Mbappe went to Real Madrid this window, then Real Madrid may look to sell. That would be quite interesting, but I think he wants to remain at Real Madrid. So, and again, Amrabat, but yeah, Amrabat looks to be heading to Atletico Madrid. So, and then there's Gravenberch as well. But again, Gravenberch, I think he'd rather go to Man United because of the relationship he has with Ten Hag. So yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Lots of possibilities.
yeah, I suppose so. I think Liverpool quite open before, and now it's sort of been closed up as a result of the Romeo Lavia stuff and Caicedo. It just hasn't worked out for them, and I don't think they're going to be briefing like their major targets again. I think they're just going to need to get it done without talking to the media about it. So, but I suspect they will get something. I think they will spend money. I think they've got one or two aces up their sleeve that they'll deliver. But in terms of names, other than sort of Thuram that I've mentioned, Kone, possibly from Gladbach could be one. But nothing substantial I've got on that front at the moment anyway.
Yeah, before we take up the conversation Anuka sir, continue.
No. So I just wanted to ask that Chelsea was like they have spent a lot of money, a bizarre amount of money this transfer window. But there are talks of them going on for another say center, another forward since Nkunku has had that injury. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think
on Chelsea's business? Sorry.
Yeah. Do you think they would go for another forward before the end of the transfer?
Oh, I mean, I think Chelsea, if you look at the numbers, and I'm not saying they haven't spent obscene amounts, unprecedented amounts, but they've sold a lot. Man United this window have sold 38 million euros worth of talent. By comparison, Chelsea have sold 260 million. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
They've only spent a net of around 80 million pounds, despite the amount of names they've brought in and the amortization they've done with it. Yeah, I think they try to get Elise, who obviously just remains with Crystal Palace. Doku is going to Man City, it seems. Brennan Johnson's one that apparently they're looking at. So yeah, I think they're going to get another attacker in, and maybe even a number 9 as well, because they've still got Lukaku on their books and stuff. So if they can ship him off, they might have to bring in Vlahovic or something like that. But yeah, I know on the face of it, Chelsea's spending has been ludicrous and directionless, I think, and very machine gun like. But they have moved on a lot of, that's a lot of money to sell on. And, Mason Mount, 60 million pounds for one. Obviously, we got... yeah, exactly. So it's just their approach. I don't know how long it'll work for, but it's not as bad as people say it is. I don't think. I think, because they've had to do an overhaul, basically. And they've recruited a fair bit of money.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because one of the teams that you mentioned was Manchester City, and we were wondering if I personally felt after winning the treble last season, they have let gun of certain big players for themselves. Gundogan has gone to Barcelona, and many other stalwarts who have helped them win those 3 competitions now for last season. So what do you think of Manchester City before we ask you more about the Saudi Pro League?
What I think of Man City, I think, again, it's sort of their reputation of being big spenders, and they absolutely are. They've spent level with Man United over the past 10 seasons, I think. This season so far, they've spent a net of about 30 million euros. Last season, they made a profit of 50 million euros. I think they're really, really good at what they do. And I know Gundogan's left to Barcelona and stuff like that, but they'll replace him. The pool's too big. Calvin Phillips, I don't know if he'll go on loan. They have been a bit slow moving in this window, but they rarely get things wrong. And so yeah, I know Doku looks like he'll be coming in. I thought they might have gone for Caicedo, but it didn't happen. They went for Rice, but yeah, another one where they seems like they spend loads, and they have done, but now they're self-sustaining and stuff. So, but in terms of who they'd bring in, I don't know. I don't get much on City really. I've had a couple of stories more about their academy than anything like that. But Fabrizio is probably Romano is probably the most reliable for Man City because I think he talks to City Group and stuff, so he gets the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm gonna take up the part where to the tournament where Henderson left and then Anukar sir probably started loving Saudi Pro League a bit lesser because it
Yeah.
took one of their prime players. But uh, Jack, I feel what Saudi Pro League is doing not only for Asian tournaments but also for global football is a big shift because we have seen Ronaldo speak about how last season it was him who had opened the floodgates or so to say for Saudi Pro League, and now this season, at the beginning of this season, throughout the transfer window, the overall perception of Saudi Pro League being a place where people shifting towards the end of their careers has slightly changed because
Mm-hmm.
people, I mean, someone from your favorite team, Newcastle, decided to not play the Champions League and come over and play to have an experience of the Saudi Pro League. So overall, how do you perceive the Saudi Pro League and how do you see it changing the football landscape in the next 5 to 10 years?
It's a big question. As someone who was raised in England, and obviously, you know what Englanders are like the status quo. We like our European top 5 leagues and stuff. I don't like it as a fan because I have sentimentality around how I see football. But
Yeah.
England does not have the monopoly on football. It's for everyone. It's worldly. And so, if they're able to do it, then, why not? I think our perception in the English media of the Saudi Pro League has been disingenuous at times. I'm sort of open to it. Like, why not? I don't actually think it's as harrowing as people suggest it is. And, for instance, the Premier League is dominant by an incredible amount against the Bundesliga, Liga, and Serie A is dying because of, either how bad they are or how good the Premier League is. But the equilibrium is pretty, and I don't like that. I like to see all the European countries sort of doing quite well, say in the Champions League and stuff. But in essence, I think the Saudi Pro League has offered a lot of these clubs a bit of a way out when they've got players on big wages and stuff. And I'm hoping that it is able, for clubs in the Serie A and stuff, they're able to like generate money in which they can compete against the Premier League via the Pro League. In a couple of years, 3 years time, it's very. I might tune into the Saudi Pro League and stuff. Why not? I don't know much about it other than the transfer side of things. It's not the MLS. It's not. People are going. You mentioned Samaximam going there in the sort of prime of his career and stuff. It could shape it up into something quite nice. But yeah, I think the English perception of it is negative, I'd say, for the most part.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily share that. It's football, but I think let's see what happens. It's made for an interesting window, if anything, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Anukar sir, this is your
So,
chance to ask. Yeah, go for it.
yeah, we have after the loss against Tottenham, we have seen quite a lot of criticism of how United have conducted business. A lot of people have pointed out that maybe people like Mason Mount, though I personally feel it's very early to judge, were not worth the money in this transfer window and how the club are going. The Glazers have been reluctant so far to do business in terms of selling the club in terms of concrete talks. What is your opinion on how the Glazers have operated? And do you see United making an addition before the transfer window ends?
Yeah, just the Glazers. I don't think people realise because I think people will see Man United and they just see, you spent big money on the transfers and stuff, but a lot of that's for sponsorship reasons, and they don't really see. Like now's the biggest example because when the takeover was supposed to happen, and we thought it would be, well, we heard it would sort of be, the summer at the very latest. Obviously, that they're stretching it out. They've impeded on the window. You could spend another 50, 60, well, Man United could spend another 50, 60 million pound more and still be under FFP. They wouldn't be breaching that. but the Glazers don't invest anything. They've put in shares into the club in 2003, and they've basically just taken out of it. There's no infrastructure or care to the club really. The decisions and decision making have been, all about enterprise rather than the football itself. It's always about commercialization rather than, winning trophies and stuff like that. So there are definitely worse owners than the Glazers, and you can look to Mike Cassia, I'd argue, is worse, but I'd say more like the owners at Bury, the owner in Macclesfield, the previous Macclesfield owner, who Blackburn had, I think it was the Venkeys, and they run that club into the ground. They're always worse owners, but the Glazers are not, they don't care about Man United and how they do, really. They care about revenue. And, in terms of transfers, no, they have no money. They had 150 million, which they've spent on 3 players. They were overspent for Hoyland. They decided not to get rid of Scott McTominay, rejected the bid from West Ham for him. Maguire, they haven't been able to get rid of. Donny van der Beek is somehow still there. So they have no money, and that's why they can't buy Amrabat, because they can't afford 30 million quid to get him. And so that's why they're trying to get Gravenberch on loan. So yeah, if they sell Van der Beek and say Martial goes to the Pro League, that's going to open up a lot. But they'd have to sell players before they bring any in. So it'll just be a question if a player does go, then they'd have money. But at the moment, they can only do a loan, is my understanding anyway.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing that we are going to ask you, and I know we won't keep you for long. You have been generous with your time with us. Is that now we have spoken in detail about different teams transfer situations, what makes sense for them, what probably is something that they would do, and it would be useful for the teams. But now, as we look at Jack Talbot as the person, and and if he has got something to share with anyone who wants to become the next Jack Talbot, because over here, both of us, we are trying to get something done in the sports industry, and I know it's a lot of it is similar. Even though we are from different countries, we are united by our passion and love for football. So, what are certain things that you would like to tell a 15-year-old who wants to do something similar to what you have done throughout your life?
I'll try not to be as generic as possible. In football industry, it's important to find a niche. My niche, I decided I needed to find a niche a couple of years ago, and I wanted to be a Bundesliga expert, analyzing stats. I wanted to be into stats, but the transfer stuff, this sort of happened. But so sometimes it can just fall in your lap. The most important thing is in this industry as well is because you will eventually make it in this industry, but you just can't give in. I know that sounds a bit airy fairy, but I mean remember 2001, I had 3 freelance positions, and I actually, for varying reasons, got let go of all 3 within a 2-week window. And I remember being like, I'm not doing this stuff anymore. But for whatever reason, as I've continued to do it, and after it's been 8 years of doing it, I finally got to a position where I really enjoy my job, and I'm very fortunate and grateful to have got here. But I wouldn't have dreamed of being where I am now, even like 3 years ago. So you just got to find your niche, and just all the failures and stuff. You embrace failure. I think that's quite cliche, but you're going to get knocked back so many times and feel like, oh, what can I do? And you're going to feel hopeless. But if you just keep in there constantly, things evolve and things change, and opportunities do open up. And then you get to a position where you want to be and enjoying football and going to games or whatever you want to do. So do it for yourself as well. I think it's important to not just do it for money, but you've got to have a passion for it as well. And don't be scared to put stuff out there, because online's like, people will love to criticize you, but just don't take Twitter seriously or anything like that. It's not real life. And yeah, I think I chose to do this because I thought I didn't want to work in the sense that and it's true, I don't really work now because I enjoy it so much. I don't really wake up like, oh, I have to go in for my job. I just wake up and I kind of like have a bit of fun, and I go back. Sometimes it's stressful, so yeah, it's a bit of a blabbering speech, but that in essence is that just sort of hang in there, even if it takes up to 10 years, and sometimes it can. But if you just make the right decisions over and over again, eventually something clicks, I suppose.
Yeah, Anukar sir, I think that's a beautiful way to summarize the episode, and we are going to remember what Jack just shared.
Absolutely, man. I mean, honestly, see, like, of course, we, as it is supposed to be, really view Jack in the highest of esteems. And honestly, like, he has done justice to what we think about him. Thank you, Jack, again, once again, for taking out the time. The words you have spoken, the transfer news. It has been a pleasure. Like for a rising football podcast in India, a country which has just come into the top 100 when it comes to Indian football. Me and Zoipan, like we have a team also of 4 or 5 people. We are really trying to do something about football in India, and it's people like you. It's like the things you do, like your kindness is something which we will always remember, because this is what we want to do with our podcast. We want to make it super big, and it's all about connecting football. Like I loved your view about the Saudi Pro League, because football is for everyone, and I think you with your words have just kind of epitomized it. So thank you so much for coming to the
No,
Indie Football
thank,
Podcast. It has been a pleasure.
thank you very much for the hospitality and the kind words. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, till then, till the next week when we have another inspiring story, or someone who breaks down the transfer windows just like Jack has done for us. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Do follow us on our social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn as well. And yes, we are looking forward to seeing all of you soon. Good night, take care.